Okay, let's get this thing going, and one thing that you will notice quite soon is how excited I am about these two devices, and actually so much that they completely threw off my plan for today because I wanted to review a gaming laptop, and I thought it's actually not necessary to post the first impressions video of the Huawei MateBook X and also the Surface laptop because both of these are already out for a few days and the bigger YouTubers already released their reviews. But after using the Huawei MateBook X for one day and the Surface laptop for a few hours today, I just couldn't stand still and I just had to share my first impressions. But what I actually won't do all that much is usually make the kind of normal first impressions video, but I actually want to focus more on the differences between these two, because even though both are kind of similar, so similar display size, similar battery size, internals and so on, the approach of each one actually goes a little bit into a different perspective, which is something that I want to cover. And of course, way more that in the definitely upcoming detailed comparison between these two. Of course, also single reviews, which will cover everything. Because I want to give you the best possible coverage about these two, because I think these could be, along with the new Razer Blade Stealth, the three most impressive device that I have seen in a long time, and this is something that doesn't happen all that much. But I would say let's go into the thing and talk about these a little bit closer. So actually this is one thing, because as you can see here, this is the late 2013 MacBook Pro, and I just needed that as a resemblance to show off what we seen a kind of improvement over the time, because as you can see, this is 13.3 inches and yeah, 1.57 kilograms. And okay, here is one thing that I have to just admit. It is actually weird that the Surface laptop actually isn't all that much smaller. Of course, different aspect ratio and so on, so therefore a little bit wider, as you can see, and not that much thinner. But what it is noticeably lighter, because 1.255 kilograms compared to 157 or 159, I think, so definitely noticeably heavier. But here is where I see kind of something that looks way more futuristic, because as you can see how much smaller this is. And that is impressive, because the difference actually in terms of internals and display size isn't all that big, because we have 13.5 inches on the Surface laptop, where we have 13.3 here, both 3:2 aspect ratio. But there are a lot of differences besides it, because as you can already see, noticeably thinner on the Huawei side. Maybe not that much, but especially in terms of weight, because 1.07 kilograms. I think if I don't have the number correctly or wrongly, but it feels so nice. It is thin. And actually one thing that I just want to point out, because I saw a lot of reviews and hands-ons where people talked about, especially on the prototypes in their hands-on, of the build quality not being that great. And I don't see anything of that here in this reunit, because yes, if I flex it very hard on the sides, you can hear some minor crackling, but this is actually already putting some force into it. But what is way more important for me is if I can lift the device on one corner and then hold it without any bigger creaking and flexing and so on. Because obviously I can flex it a little bit if I try to. This is possible, but that is the case on every laptop. But I just have to say, it feels very nice. Of course, maybe you can see it already. There is a thin gap between, and there you can put it down. But you can't really avoid it. But I have to say, just in terms of build quality, I'm not disappointed, because that was actually one thing that I was a little bit concerned about once I've seen the first impressions videos and so on. But no, it feels super nice. I really like the design. It feels so lightweight, which is amazing. Of course, we won't get many ports, because you can see USB Type-C and the headphone jack and another USB Type-C, and you can only charge on that one. So that is something that you won't get. But what you therefore get is actually nice is the Huawei Mate dock, which gives you a few more ports, which I will get into in the review. And I hope it's not too bright, but it looks like it on the video. Here, the Surface laptop. What is with that one? First of all, let's check that one's quality. And yes, I think the inside looks amazing. But as you can see here, you can flex it as well, of course. But it feels way more solid. I would say a little bit more solid. It feels like more like out of one block of aluminum. But it feels a little bit nicer built. What it does though, this. And no, this is not some creaking or so from the device. This is just hitting the keyboard, because it's not secured in here, but there is no flexor. So it feels super solid, like out of one block, and I absolutely like that in-hand feel. I also kind of have to say I like the industrial feel, because the Huawei looks way more like maybe like a MacBook or something like that, but I have to give it to that. But in terms of ports, I am not quite so sure here either, because only one USB Type-A, which for me right now is still more important. But definitely the Huawei is more, if I would say, better suited for something if you want to use it like with desktop replacement. But here, DisplayPort, headphone jack, I guess this would be for the Wi-Fi reception and so on. And here the dock or the port for the charging. But if I would have to choose winner here, at least for right now, I like this one since it's just way lighter and so on. But this is actually by far not one of the main differences, because if I put them side by side, which I hope will actually fit on the screen, I didn't try that, and yes, you can actually, let's try this, open both with one hand. So this is possible and this is possible, and I really like both hinges because they are both very stiff. Of course they wobble a little bit, but they don't really move on their own, so very nice here in that regard. Let me turn that actually on. And yes, you won't really see all that much because I can't really go any further out with the camera, but that's not important so much, yes, because what I want to go into now are actually the internals, because here, of course, we have the nice Alcantara and it feels so nice, but I'm not quite sure if it will look like that for a longer period of time because it could pick up some oils and so on. But now, here, nice aluminum, feels great. And here is actually already one of my biggest gripes about this device, which I will get into later. Otherwise, how do you unlock them? This one, if I look into it, yeah, it doesn't work right now because its time is past, has the Windows Hello camera, which works fine. And this one, yeah, you didn't see anything weird here. This one has Windows Hello camera, where this one, as you can see here, has the fingerprint reader. That one works super nice. Very fast, pretty much like on the Huawei, as you can see here, like on their phones. So absolutely top notch. But top here, both. The trackpad, that is actually one of the bigger differences, because here we have the precision trackpad and it feels great. Absolutely top surface texture and it sounds nice. And if I just tap, you don't really hear a gap or so, which is also not the case here. But what irks me here a little bit is just this. And maybe you will see this a little bit if I go closer. You will see that this one has, especially here on the lower side, a little bit of some kind of wiggle room. Because what's the case in both, you can't press them up top here. It starts like at here where you can click them. Here, doesn't work either. But you hear this little bit of gap inside, but click is here. But the problem is if I want to scroll, if I just tap, if I use this, you always hear this gap and you feel it going down. So maybe this is just a thing of my personal unit in this case. And I really wish for that maybe next badges will make this a little bit stiffer, because otherwise it is not quite as good, not quite as precise, as great as the precision trackpad, but it would be way more than good enough. And I would say it's easily a very good trackpad because it feels nice, size-wise, it's totally fine. But it is this little gap that just annoys me. Bigger difference though in terms of keyboards, because they have a completely different approach. Because once I've used this for the first few minutes, it reminded me a lot on my old MacBook. Because as you can hear, it's more of a laptop with this clickety sound. So not too much trouble, but way more than enough. And I really like the MacBook keyboards from back then, like late 2013, because you get a great feel and it sounds a little bit on the cheaper side, but the haptic feedback is very nice. Here though, absolutely amazing. Just listen. Super nicely dampened, also a little bit more travel. Both have backlights and so on, so quite similar. What I don't like on both, what I don't like on both is the small shift button. But I guess most like the bigger one on the right. I prefer a bigger one on the left, but that is what it is. I'm not going too much into the displays, just in one difference, which is that we have a touch screen on the Surface laptop, which we don't have on this one. And this one also has pen support. Not here as well. So this is just maybe like more of a normal laptop, but I don't really see a big benefit in terms of a touch screen here on this one, because touch maybe yes, but not the pen, because writing like this, because that is for both the maximum angle, which is a little bit less on the Huawei, not really convenient. Just in terms of display size, I'm not going to show this now, this is for the comparison. I will just tell you one thing. And that is that even though the Surface laptop has the higher resolution, actually noticeable, both have 3:2 aspect ratio, it doesn't actually look as nice as for right now. I will have to make some measurements and so on of the Huawei, because the Huawei feels a little bit sharper and colors look a little bit proper, more proper, if that's right. But a speaker, this is just something that I have to show you, because I would say super nice on both. But a little bit of a different approach how they get this sound done. Because, let me quickly find my music. There is actually something that I have to go into. Oh, not a touchscreen. That's something you will have to get used to. I don't use the touchscreen much, but still. Okay, now, I'm not going to show you what I'm going to start off, but both are at maximum volume, which is almost too loud on one. But okay, let's start one, and I'm not going to tell you which one, and you can then decide. Okay. A really good volume and also super nice and loud. And what I like is, that's something that you maybe can see. Here is where the speaker is somewhere, because here is where the sound comes out. Really nice solution, because I still don't get why actually some laptops still have the sound coming from the bottom, which is not the case on both of you, which is absolutely great. So now the next one, and I hope you still don't know which one is which. Okay, you had time to guess. Okay, the first one was the Surface laptop. And I have to say, it's not nearly as loud as the MateBook, but it sounds a little bit more high quality, a little bit nicer. But I have to say, the MateBook X also sounds great. It has also Dolby software and so on, where you can tweak it, which is nice, equalizer and so on. And it sounds still good, a little bit more hollow, not quite as high quality, as I said, not quite as proper. Not quite as nice, but maybe due to it being louder, I like it. Performance, just real quick, from what I see so far. Due to the high resolution of the Surface laptop, it seems a little bit slower if you scroll a lot and so on. But on normal tasks where you won't really notice it that much. But I did see a difference with the MateBook X, because that one, just with the low resolution, feels super nice and smooth. Because let me quickly show you the browser here. And yes, it fully delivers. And yes, I will take my time in this review, because why? Oh, it's not a review. Why not? And way more is coming up, don't worry, in the full detailed review, because I'm trying not to give you too much information, to keep it a little bit of a, yeah. I did not connect to my 2.4 gigahertz Wi-Fi, so let me quickly get that done on this one as well. And I hope you liked the video so far. But as you can see, I'm super excited about it, because both are so great. Both are so nice. Okay, let's switch. That was actually a little bit. I have to check that for the review or for the comparison, how I will show them off both the best way. Because this one is actually a little bit too bright at the moment. Let me dim this a little bit. This one is quite okay. Okay, so let's check the browsing here on the Surface, as you can see. Yeah, absolutely top, really nice. I like how it responds in terms of the trackpad, really nice and smooth. But this here, I just have to say, feels a little bit lighter. Also, nice trackpad feel, really nice. A little bit nicer here on the Surface, just in terms of trackpad, but performance, I see the difference. It's not a big one, and that is actually also the next thing. The Surface laptop has a fan, and I got it already working on once, but just once, maybe because it did a lot of things back. Because actually I don't use Windows 10 S. I tried it for a few minutes, but I had to upgrade to Pro. Why? Because I use, as a reviewer, some apps that I need to monitor the CPU temperatures and so on, so I had to do that. The MateBook. Now, that one, no fan, so you can trigger it off. And I did already a little bit of a quick test to see if it will throttle or so. And what it doesn't do is throttle, actually, because what it does is it just doesn't use the full turbo boost. It turbo boosts to 3.2 gigahertz for a little bit, like for a minute and so. Then it goes down to 2.5 or 2.7, and I think the lowest point was 2.4 after like 10 minutes. And this maybe doesn't hold on the performance as long as the Surface laptop will do, I guess. But I think that is still way more than enough, because it is just a big benefit of having something that is completely fanless. For me, that's a big bonus. From what I know from the Surface from the Surface Pro that I reviewed before, I don't see the fans going on much on the Surface laptop either. But just having something that can't have them on is so much nicer. Temps, though, I think the surface will be a lot better, because I reached the maximum temperature of about 82 degrees on the MateBook, but in normally, I would say normal use, it was at about 45 degrees, 42 degrees in a very warm room with about like 30 degrees. But the maximum on the full load, quite normal room, was at about 65, 66 degrees, which is still totally fine. Now, software. And I'm making this already kind of a review, but it's still not, because you will get way more information, don't worry, especially some details and so on. Software. What I like on the MateBook, that we have some minor tweaks, like for example, what we have here on this one is, for example, here, a display manager, where you can change the color temperature very easily and conveniently. So that is super nice. And what we also get is actually also something very nice, because we have the MateBook Manager that gives you all the things like issues that it found, system configuration, so that's nice. But what I also like, for example, here on the surface, which is something what you won't get, is for example this. If you tap here, you have usually the brightness, but you also have some kind of setting, how it controls the energy management, and it just shows you some things a little bit different. And maybe you don't have the Intel driver graphics and so on, but there are some minor tweaks that they did to the software. And already running this up, because this will actually be maybe longer than the comparison. What do I think of both, or what are the pros and cons of both so far? Now, the MateBook X has one thing going for it. It's just noticeably lighter, more compact, more portable. The charger is super tiny. It's just a little bit bigger than a smartphone charger. It is built very nice. The display is beautiful. The speaker sounds super loud. Performance is top, and I don't see anyone who will do normal tasks with it having any issues with the performance. I used it, and browsing and everything works just great. I don't think you will do like heavy video rendering and so on, some lighter photo editing, and sure, do it, absolutely. Battery life. My first charge ended with about 6 hours of use, which maybe doesn't sound so impressive because they claim 10. But once again, I have to point out, no sorts of battery saving features. I turned them all off, and I used the brightness of, I fixed 60%, which should be at around 150 lux, I guess. So really nice device, 1,400 euros, and I think you can do return. From what I see so far after just one day, I'm highly impressed, because everything seems to be on point. And this is actually a weird thing, because this is their very first laptop, and they pretty much crushed already like 95 of the competition outside what I see. Because if I would have to buy one, it would definitely be between this maybe and the Surface laptop, and maybe something like the Razer Blade Stealth, because I've reviewed all of them, and so far everyone has kind of like a deal breaker. If I would have to point out something what I see right now which annoys me a little bit, is the trackpad, the little gap, which could be improved maybe over time, but I don't use the trackpad all that much. Now, the Surface laptop, what has that one going for it? It's a little bit heavier, feels though a little bit more high quality, a little bit more industrial design, but it has a few things going for it. First of all, the better keyboard, even though the one on the MateBook is nice. The better trackpad, the maybe not better display per se, but it has touch input, and it also has Surface Pen support. That's something. Sound is great. Performance is super nice, and I think the thermals will be a little bit better. So in more heavier use, it will get the upper hand. Software is a little bit more clean, I guess better support maybe and so on, but I can't really say. So I will put them side by side, of course, make a single review for both of them, but I can already tell you so much. Both will get a very, very positive review, and I really am very interested and excited about it on my own, which one I would take as my personal laptop if I would go for one, because it's actually one thing that I would wish to have one, because if I would, because I'm not on the market, because I have my MacBook still, and I just don't need a laptop all that much, because I use my desktop for everything pretty much, so I don't need one. But if, and I would really like to have one once again, one of these or the Stealth, like I said, will be it, and I'm super excited, because this just feels like from the future, because it's so lightweight, and it feels a lot like a MacBook, I get that, but this one really has a lot going for it. And actually, let me know what you think, which one I sounded more excited about in this preview, because I can't tell it either, because but then this keyboard, this trackpad, and that's gonna, but they both are so great. And maybe things like maybe the battery life will actually make an impact here, because if this one, maybe the Surface laptop, will hold like 3 hours longer, then I can live with something being a little bit bigger and so on, but I don't know. And then the Stealth, I can't wait to get my hands on that. So cutting this off at about 20 minutes. I know I talked a lot, and it was kind of a review already, I know, but yeah. let me know. Otherwise, down there below, let me know which one you think is the nicer one. And don't just see the MateBook being better because it's just smaller. Just being smaller isn't always the best, because especially if you need more power, maybe this won't particularly throttle, but it won't be the power user. But I don't use, and actually let me know that, because on my laptop, I don't usually do much harder tasks, because what I do there is usually just make my notes, I write through, I watch a lot of YouTube videos, do typical stuff, not anything really demanding. So I don't need the horsepower. The MateBook X, nope, no problem at all being throttling. So, because if you buy something like this for your video editing, you are doing it wrong, sorry. Okay, yeah, have a nice weekend.